Okay, so today we are revisiting my first One Piece review. So if you don't know, I'm doing a reread right now. I got halfway through the series up through the Summit War saga. I got to the end of that, and now I'm going back to the first 3 arcs to reread. The reason I'm doing this reread is because I went into One Piece completely blind. I didn't know the genre of the story. I didn't know the basic plot line. I had never been given an elevator pitch. Maybe I had. I don't know. I have an impressively terrible memory, so it's definitely possible that I was given an elevator pitch and I just didn't remember it. But as far as I could remember, no elevator pitch. I didn't even know how long the series was going into it. Nothing. All I had was one very persistent commenter that really wanted me to start One Piece. And so I picked up the first few volumes, and the rest is history. So I read the first several sagas, not knowing the genre, not knowing the basic setup. I just went into a story. That was the amount of context I had. And I read the first few sagas thinking, oh, this must be just like a lighthearted, fun, silly adventure. Because that's the vibe I picked up from the start. Which now that I've reread the first saga, I do feel... it does seem stupid, doesn't it? So anyway... that was the impression that I got off of it. That was the perspective I had reading it. So I've forgotten a lot from the first 3 sagas of this story just because I have a terrible memory, but also because I was not reading it with the intentionality that I want to be reading it now. So I'm doing a reread to recontextualize the beginning, to see some of the ground laying that was put there that I missed because of the perspective in which I was reading it, and just because I want to. I just want to. So my first One Piece review was, as far as I remember, it was a spoiler-free review, and it was a batch review. So what I do on my channel is I try to review pretty much every book that I read, and if it's a lesser-known series or one that I just don't have a lot to say about, I tend to just group it up with a couple of other books because reviews really just don't get very many views anyway, so batching them makes sense. Is that my phone going off? It is. I'm in a room by myself. I don't know why I thought it was someone else's phone. So anyway, like I said, I didn't know anything about One Piece. I certainly didn't know that the fandom was this big. I had no idea. I didn't expect very many people to care that I was reading the series. So anyway, I batched this up with a couple of other books. So we'll skip those other reviews and we'll get straight into my very first One Piece review when she didn't know anything. Oh, by the way, I also mentioned I read the first saga in December of 2020. So, you know, a good chunk of time ago. Okay, finally, One Piece. I read the first 12 volumes of One Piece and I really enjoyed it. So I've been told that the first 12 volumes of One Piece are like the first arc. It's when the book is in setup mode and then it gets good after that, which is why. So I'll throw this out there because I did just say I was completely blind. I didn't know anything, and then I say this. So just to be clear, I got that information after I started the book because I posted on Instagram that I was reading the first 3 volumes and I was going to record the first 3 volumes, and then I had multiple comments saying you really need to read the first 12 before you review because that's the first, like that's how much you need in order for the story to really be established and for you to kind of know what you're getting into. So that context, which is why I waited until I read the first 12 to review or to talk about it. And I don't know, I really liked this setup. If this is the worst of One Piece and it only takes off from here, I'm really excited for that because, yeah, I do think that it just gets better from here for the most part. I mean, if we're talking about sagas, not arcs, because I do think that there are weaker sagas. No, I do think that Thriller Bark is weaker than East Blue. Even though I have mixed feelings on Thriller Bark, but overall I liked it for the most part. But I do think it's weaker. Anyway, because I had a great time with this setup. So the first 12 volumes are Luffy. We get a little bit of his backstory. I did call him Luffy at the beginning, didn't I? I didn't know. I also wasn't watching the anime at all. I'm still not. I want to. someday maybe. A little bit of his backstory, we get his predicament with the gum gum fruit, and then we're just on a journey with him collecting his crew, making friends, and finding people to be on the ship with him. I assume the crew is complete now since we're through the first arc, the setup arc. So I'll talk to you about how I feel about the crew, I'll talk to you how I feel about the story in general. I love Luffy. He is so sweet and innocent. This entire story, I guess, okay, this whole manga so far is very whimsical and childlike and silly and fun and doesn't seem to take itself too seriously, which isn't always what I go. You know, I think that's fair. I think that's fair to assume that that's what this is, because it is an absurdist world. I, at this point, not only didn't like absurdism, but also just hadn't really read very much absurdism at all. So to not really perceive it as absurdism, as an absurdist world, and to just view it as whimsical and childlike. A little bit of context, I really enjoy classic books and I really enjoy classic fairy tales. So I don't know what I was thinking at this point, but I could see myself reading this and thinking, oh, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, like those classic nonsense, Alice in Wonderland definitely more so, but these nonsensical worlds that also have intentionality to them, I think is probably the vibe I was thinking of when I said whimsical and childlike, which it is whimsical. But two, also, I did just finish reading Arlong Park. And it's so intense, and I don't really know how I didn't also mention the intense themes and emotions that came up in the first saga. Maybe because I just wasn't as invested in the story at this point, so those intense moments were like, oh wow, okay, we can get real, but it didn't hit me quite as hard the first time. What I go isn't usually what I go for, but I think it worked so well with this. There were so many just cute sort of scenes and cute depictions of Luffy and the way he like handles betrayals, or the way he handles new information, or even how he tackles like the bad guys that he's facing off against, how he interacts with them while he's fighting them. It's just, he has this innocence about him that is really, really adorable. And I liked meeting all these new characters and collecting them along. Yeah, no, totally, yes. Luffy is super childlike and very sweet and doe-eyed and innocent. I get it. I get what you're saying, Murph. Them along the way and collecting some of their backstories as well. It was really fun and sweet. Also, the first big bad we face off against is a circus. It's a clown and a lion tamer and a swordsman on a unicycle. We fought a circus first. So, I mean, talk about tone setting. Sweet. It kept this innocent tone the entire time that I think fit really well with the story, even though the story did go darker. Oh, good, she noticed. In certain areas. There are some certain things that didn't work out as well. This is still gonna be mostly spoiler-free, but I'm gonna get kind of specific about certain things, so it's lightly spoiler-free. If you're sensitive to spoilers, probably just skip to the end of this video. There are certain things that I don't love about this. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief that I have to have. Like, I'm fine with the magic of this world, and I'm fine with the fact that we have fish people, even though they look ridiculous. I chose Hachi. I chose Hachi as the example of someone who looks ridiculous. What are the there's so many fishmen here, and Hachi isn't even the most important one. I could have chosen Arlong, the main big bad of the most intense arc. And I chose Hachi. What are the odds? I'm fine with the fact that we have fish people and that we have people with cat claws that are kind of cat-like themselves. I'm fine with the gum gum fruit. I'm fine with pretty much anything that can be explained with, well, magic. But there are also some things that are not meant to be magical that I have to suspend a lot of disbelief for. Like that one character that was deserted on a stranded island for, I think, 50 days without food. I mean, he had food at first, and he let it last him, I think, for around 20 days, and then... Yeah, oh good, I did clarify. Yeah, he was there for 85 days. And it lasted him 20, and it barely lasted, like, it was like less than a meal a day for 20 days. Yeah. And still was there. He was there for 80 days total. So he had 50 plus. Oh, good. I'm glad I clarified all these things. Plus days with no food whatsoever. And, you know, it's fine, I guess. And then the other character that's with him went the full 80 with no food except 85 for eating his own foot. And as far as I can tell, he didn't have any water. It's true, we were shown a water source for Sanji, but we don't know if Daddy-O, he's not a dad. I don't know why I called him that. We don't know if Eat Your Own Foot guy had a water source. Like, we saw the kid with water, but the adult didn't seem to have any stream of water around him. So we're just kind of supposed to be okay with this, like just roll with people not eating. I'm gonna be honest, it still bothers me. I wish it didn't. I wish I was a better absurdist consumer at this point. And I think I've done okay. There are definitely, I don't know. I think I do better at accepting the nonsense of this world than I did in the beginning, but there are still things that I get really hung up on. And in rereading this, I still got pretty hung up on this. Not eating for long periods of time, and they're fine. Other than like, especially because this entire arc, Sanji's entire arc, is based on food. You know, like the entire arc is Sir Jin is maybe his name. I don't know if Jin is how you pronounce it. That's how I said it in my head. Doesn't matter. Jin comes in. He's dying. He's starving to death. One meal revitalizes him, and he's good. He's like set. Basically, he hasn't lost any muscle or energy in this however long he was starved. He's back to normal after one meal. And then he goes and he gets his captain, who's also been starved for X amount of time. Comes back, one meal, boom. No loss of muscle mass, no loss of energy, no loss of mental state. He's back to normal. Good. A meal revitalizes us to this extent. Then we feed his entire crew, like 100 people. Every single one of them has the exact same response. One meal, they're perfectly back to normal. And so this entire arc setup, the plot of Sanji's entire setup is one meal can revitalize to the point of no bodily harm that we can see. They can now steal, pillage, and destroy people who've been eating heartily for years. They can overpower them after one meal, right? So like, food in this arc plays a huge role. And then you want to take me to a place where they're deprived of food to this extent. And I don't know. I struggle with the logic of this arc. I love this arc. I love Sanji's beginning, but it's hard for me. It shouldn't be. It's absurdist. Just roll with it. I can't. There are certain things in the series that I cannot roll with. But I typically don't go on about the things that just take the absurdism a little bit too far for me, because it's like, it's absurdist. You can't nitpick like this. But sometimes I do. They're pretty hungry. Also, there was this one character. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But also, this focus on food and this revitalization to this extent, to the point of no bodily harm during this starvation period just after one meal. This isn't even a theme throughout the series, except for Luffy. Luffy is the only one that could go a long period of time without food, or that can be like so deeply harmed that he's near death, and then one meal will revitalize him. He's the only character that consistently does this throughout the series. We get little one-off gags like Brook and his milk revitalization healing bones stuff. We get like little gags here and there, but it doesn't remain a constant theme throughout the story. It's just this one-off, really important story element that seems to encompass all of the world, except that it stops here. I know I shouldn't focus on these things. It does. It gets to me. It gets to me a little. Character that got knocked off of a boat and then we just don't hear from him for, I think, an entire manga or two. I mean, an entire volume or two. We just don't hear from this character. And I guess we're supposed to assume him to be dead until we need him, until he's convenient to enter the story again. And then a big fish happens to... This I'm fine with. I don't know what's wrong with me. This I'm fine with. Upon reread, it's like, oh yeah, that completely works for this world. That people would just be thrown overboard and then near drown, and then a panda fish throws them up because we need them again in the story. That works for me. That level of absurdism works. I guess maybe because that level of absurdism, that kind of nonsense happens consistently throughout the series. It's when the absurdism is contained to one thing and then it doesn't remain consistent, which almost never happens. Admittedly, Oda is great at keeping his absurdism consistent so that it feels intentional and it seems to work with this world. But for whatever reason, this food stuff I get so hung up on. And I just, it's my own thing. You don't have to get mad at me about it. It's my own thing. Jump onto land right in front of our crew of people and spit him out, and then jump back into the ocean, and then the guy's just a part of our crew again. Well, he's not a part of our crew, Murph. He's not a part of our crew. Like, there are certain things that I'm just like, okay, sure. This, yep, we'll roll with it. I still do that. There are still things that I do still have that reaction. It's hard for me. I'm not good at, like, these are human characters we're talking about. These aren't even magic carriers in this world. And it's hard for me to suspend my disbelief to that point and not be like, okay, but that means that and that means that, and how did this all line up perfectly? It's kind of difficult for me to just roll with certain things. Yeah, me too. Me too. Oh, I thought I muted. Me too. I am I talking to someone else? This is past me. It's still true. It's rare now. I've gotten used to Oda's absurdism, and I think that I've done an okay job at accepting this absurdist world and rolling with it for someone who previously had read almost no absurdism, and the absurdism that I had read I didn't like. So I think I'm doing okay, but there are still things that I just get hung up on, and I gotta get over it, I guess. But this isn't a series that seems to take itself too seriously. It's a very lighthearted series, and the tone, while dark things are sometimes happening, the tone of this book is always light. So I guess that's true. I guess I see where I'm coming from here, because even in Arlong Park and other, really intense moments, we're still doing jokes the whole way through. Like, Luffy is still killing people or just taking people out by gum powers and doing gum rockets and stretching himself, and he's about to drown. The one thing that can defeat him, not really, but one of the only things that can defeat him, and they stretch his neck out of the water. I mean, like, it's true. In intense, hyper intense moments, there's still jokes and gags the whole way through. So you're right. But I would argue that those gags and jokes, they don't take away from the emotional impact of what's happening. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to just kind of roll with it when something really out there happens, that it's like, you'll get over it. The gags don't take away from the emotionally intense moments. Okay, I don't believe you, but we'll just keep walking. But that said, this series is so fun so far. I mean, I'm having so much fun. I love Luffy. I enjoy almost the entire crew. I mean, I do enjoy the entire crew. I love almost the entire crew. The little adventures, Usopp, she's talking about Usopp. That they go on are genuinely really fun. And I'm loving getting these different people's backstories and where they're from, and when we go to pick them up, the different adventures that we get into. Plus, already, we're still in the setup, we're still in the establishing and earning each other's trust, and already, I love the chemistry in this crew. Totally. The chemistry of the crew is one of the best things in this saga and in the series as a whole. And the devotion, Luffy is a really devoted guy. I love his character so much, and I'm enjoying his crew so much too. Of his crews so far, I think my favorites are obviously Luffy. I really like Zolo. And oh yeah. Yeah, so I read from Viz, and I've switched to Shonen Jump, that's what it's called. In both of those, Viz and Shonen Jump, they translate his name with an L, Zolo. I read it Zoro now, because I've been enlightened, but yeah. And I'm interested to learn more about him. I love Nami. She's been really interesting so far. I love Nami too in this saga. Really, I like all of them except Usopp. Usopp? No T. It's okay. Pretty sure is his name. He's the only one that I'm kind of like, I don't really care about you. I could keep you. I could leave you. He will win you over, but I can't blame myself, honestly. His introduction, Syrup Village, can't blame myself. But everybody else I really like, and I'm loving their chemistry, and I'm having such a great time seeing this crew come together. I think I've enjoyed pretty much every section of this book, even though Usopp isn't a character that I care about that much. I really enjoyed our time in his area, learning about him and solving the problem of his area as well. Did you enjoy that? I did enjoy that the first time. It's true. I did. We'll talk about it. I don't know. I've enjoyed this journey, the journey that they're on. That sounded really cheesy. I meant I'm enjoying watching them go from place to place and finding new problems while also like going after their individual goals and group goals. I do wonder what the stakes are going to be in this story since Luffy is virtually indestructible. I mean, he has super strength. He doesn't seem to bleed like other people. He has like super fast healing. He's bulletproof. I don't know if he has super fast healing, but he does seem to be able to take far more damage than your average character. Bulletproof, stab proof. I mean, he gets injured with these things, but they don't kill him. He's virtually unkillable. I mean, it's okay. At this point, I don't realize how durable people are in this world in general. Killable except for drowning. And we even have already tackled the potential of drowning. So with him being so virtually indestructible at this point, I do wonder what the stakes are going to be, other than the fact that like everybody else in this crew is human. So they are destructible. Maybe that's where the stakes will be in Luffy trying to protect his friends. I don't know. I'm curious what the author's gonna do. I know that this is a really long series. I'm curious what this author is going to do to keep stakes for that long, but I mean, I'm not worried about it. Anyway, I've had a really great time with the first 12 volumes, and if this is the part that usually throws people off, makes people feel like, oh, okay, this is dragging, I have to push myself to get through this part. If that's how people usually feel about the first 12 volumes, I'm feeling really good about this series because I've had a great time with these first 12. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that I enjoyed the first 12 as much as I did because honestly, the first 12 volumes are great. There are, you know, spots that aren't a spot that isn't the best, but the first 12 volumes of One Piece really are fantastic. I really enjoyed it the first time, for sure, but the second time around of reading these first 12 volumes, this first saga really hit me so hard. The first, you know, Romance Dawn really hit me hard this next time around, this second time around. Honestly, Romance Dawn, I thought it was a really strong opening when I read it the first time, but now going back and reading it again, it's just brilliant. I think it's brilliant the way Oda set us up with this more lighthearted and doe-eyed and sweet tone. That's how it seemed, and it looks like just this light, fun adventure. But then he puts these more intentional and emotional. I mean, yeah, sure, people are getting shot, people are getting attacked, people are getting killed, but like it's all, even still, that is all really written with that lighthearted tone. But then you have these really intense things that are happening, like I think Zoro's beginning is really emotionally intense, and obviously Nami's beginning is really intense. And we get these things that kind of give us a peek into the emotional depths that we're really heading into. I actually think Oda did a pretty brilliant job in this first saga of lulling us into this sweet story, sweet looking story, while still showing us a lot of what's to come, just slowly, and while still giving us the lighthearted tones, so that when we get to sagas like Water 7, and when we get to arcs like Water 7 and Enies Lobby, it's already been established from the very start that we can go really emotionally intense, and we can tackle really brutal and real life topics, so that the setup doesn't feel like a lie. The setup doesn't feel inconsistent. It does. This first saga does fit with the rest of the series really, really well. It does have its weak points, mainly Syrup Village, but there are other things. It does have its weak points, but really, the majority of this saga is a blast to read. It's either funny and silly and sweet and heartwarming, or it's shockingly emotional, shockingly fast. Granted, it definitely hit me a lot harder on reread when I'm so emotionally invested in these characters, but even on the first read, I clearly picked up on how emotional it can be. I don't know. I do understand why people say get through the first 12 volumes before you make a judgment call on the series, because I really do think that Arlong Park is the real testament to what this story can be. But it is amazing to me that I'm not even done with this series yet, and I just started it, 7-8 months ago, and going back and rereading the beginning felt so nostalgic to me. And it felt like it was a story that I've grown up reading. It felt like a story that I read in my childhood and had this attachment to, that I'm now revisiting. That level of just sinking into a story that was familiar and that's meaningful to me, I got that on a reread of a book that I read for the first time, of a series that I read for the first time in adulthood, and I haven't even finished yet. That level of nostalgia, my first time reading, I don't know, that's something. I really have fallen in love with this series. I think that's quite obvious. Anyway, my plan for this video was the first half of the video, I was going to react to my initial review, and then the second half of the video, I was going to re-review it. But this reaction, since it's been so chatty, has already taken me 30 minutes. So I'm probably just going to leave it here because Arabasta is already, I'll figure out the right way to say it. The next saga it's gonna take me 2 weeks to get through anyway, because I'm really trying to take my time and soak this in. And I even pushed myself to read a little bit faster than I wanted to for this saga just to get this video up in time. So I'll just go ahead, I'll record the next video. I'll record my review right now before I start the next saga, but you won't see that until next week. That way I have a good 2 weeks to reread the next saga as well. I don't know that I'll do this every time, but I don't know. I just want to soak in this reread. I want to soak in the beginning of the story. I want to enjoy it. So please be patient with me. But anyway, next week, I guess I've just decided, is going to be my re-review of the first saga. Now that I've reread it, what are some new things that have stood out to me and that have been really impactful for me? It won't be like a standard review where I recount every scene and every detail. It's going to be much more condensed than that, but it's probably still going to be quite chatty because there were a lot of things that really held a lot of meaning for me this time around. And then we'll get into my reaction and re-review of the next saga, and eventually I will get back to my first read through, but I don't know, guys. I'm just trying to soak up the series, so I'm taking my time. Okay, so I guess I'll end it there. This was my reaction to my first review of the East Blue. I'm glad I enjoyed it the first time. I'm so glad that I continued with it and didn't quit here. I mean, how could you? Really, after Arlong Park, how do you quit there? Next week will be a re-review of East Blue. Be sure to chat with me in the comments. I would love to discuss this more with you. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon. Bye.